Is the NBA the most horrible sport in the world? Bright lights, sold-out arenas, slam dunks on highlight reels. That's the NBA you see. But behind the scoreboard, there are murder scenes, ruined fortunes, and addictions that never made headlines. Players left bleeding in the street, careers destroyed overnight by betrayal, bullets, or their own choices. These are the league's most hidden, untold chapters, the ones they hope you forget. Want to know the truth? Stick around and don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive in. Number 20, Eddie Curry's unthinkable nightmare. When people talk about NBA busts, Eddie Curry's name gets thrown around way too casually, but most fans have no clue about the darkness behind the headlines. In January 2009, Curry's world was shattered. His ex-girlfriend, Nova Henry, and their 10-month-old daughter, Ava, were brutally shot and killed by her own attorney, Frederick Goings. This wasn't just some stranger. Frederick had represented Nova in a custody case against Curry, and he was also secretly in a relationship with her. Prosecutors say when Nova tried to break it off, things turned deadly. Even worse, Curry's 3-year-old son, Noah, was in the apartment. He saw it happen. He tried to wake his mom and babysitter. When he couldn't, he curled up beside them and fell asleep. Goings was convicted in 2013 and sentenced to life.
The lawyer is sentenced to life in prison Thursday for shooting to death a woman and her daughter.
But for Curry, the damage was permanent. This wasn't just a career setback. It was a soul-crushing tragedy that stripped away the NBA spotlight and exposed the cold reality of fame. Money can't protect you from betrayal, and even the people closest to you might hide the darkest intentions imaginable. Number 19, the collapse of Robert Swift. If Eddie Curry's tragedy showed the human cost of betrayal, Robert Swift's story is what happens when a career collapse spirals into chaos. The 7'2" high school phenom was the Sonics' 12th pick in the 2004 draft and made around $20 million in the league. But injuries ended his career early, and what came next was like something out of a crime drama. Swift refused to leave his foreclosed $1 million home, living among empty beer cans, bullet holes in the garage, and cars that hadn't moved in years. Then came the raid. Police hit the house where Swift was staying, just 100 yards from an elementary school, and found a sawed-off shotgun and a military-style grenade launcher in his bedroom. Prosecutors described him as a heroin addict, tied up in his roommate's drug world, even helping collect the heroin debt. Swift pleaded guilty to unlawful possession of a short-barreled shotgun. From NBA promise to living in squalor with illegal weapons, it's one of the league's most jarring downfalls. And the crazy part, this wasn't a headline from a crime show. It was real life for a guy once pegged as the future of the Sonics front court. Number 18, Keon Clark. Robert Swift's fall was shocking, but Keon Clark's truth bomb was pure disbelief. In 2007, the former 6'11" shot-blocking menace admitted something almost no one in NBA history has said out loud. He never played a single game sober. Not one. From high school to the pros. Clark says he was drinking a half pint to a pint of gin every day, sometimes even during halftime. Drafted 13th overall in 1998, Clark showed flashes with Denver, Toronto, and Sacramento, even posting a PER above league average. But the lifestyle caught up fast. Years after leaving the league, he was hit with weapons, drugs, and DUI charges, including possession of a firearm without the required ID. Police described him as being on a destructive path long before his 8-year prison sentence made it official. In court, Clark didn't hide. Money didn't dissolve my problems. It increased them, he told the judge, admitting his fame fueled the spiral. Now, he says he's sober for the first time in decades, crediting counseling and rehab for his progress. Keon Clark's story isn't just about wasted potential. It's a brutal reminder that talent can't outscore addiction, and the game can't save you if you can't save yourself. 17, Rodney Rogers. Keon Clark's battles were internal, but Rodney Rogers' life changed in one instance. The 6'7" forward, 1999-2006 Man of the Year, 12-year NBA veteran, finals appearance with the Nets, was the Durham Bull, known for bulldozing defenders. Off the court, he was just as unstoppable, working heavy machinery for his hometown's public works department, coaching kids, and starting a trucking business. Then came November 28, 2008. Riding an ATV in rural Vance County, North Carolina, Rogers split left in a race with a friend only to see a ditch he'd never noticed before. This impact threw him, flipping him over and leaving him unable to move. Doctors said he had just a 5% chance of ever walking again. The first year was the darkest. Rogers and his girlfriend, Faye, kept the blinds closed. Both considered ending their lives, but instead, they chose to fight, marrying in 2010 and founding the Rodney Rogers Foundation to help others living with paralysis. Rogers admits he struggles with losing the simple things, holding his wife's hand, standing on his own. But his mindset is pure competitor. It is what it is. We've just got to keep fighting. Even without the game, he's still showing how to win. Number 16, Nick Van Exel's son. Rodney Rogers' accident was a tragedy of fate. Nick Van Exel's family story is a tragedy of choice. In December 2010, his son, Nicky Van Exel, fatally shot his best friend, Bradley Ayo, a man he'd grown up with, lived across the street from, and even attended the 2006 NBA Finals with. Nicky claimed it was an accident, saying they were fooling around with the shotgun he hadn't known was loaded. But prosecutors argued otherwise, that he feared Ayo would expose a string of robberies they'd committed earlier that year. After the shooting, Nicky wrapped Ayo's body in plastic and dumped it in Lake Ray Hubbard, actions the jury saw as deliberate, not panic. The trial was emotional. Nick Van Exel, the 1998 All-Star known as Nick the Quick, wept on the stand, apologizing to Ayo's family and pleading for mercy. But the jury found Nicky guilty of murder, sentencing him to 60 years in prison, eligible for parole after 30. Nicky says he takes full responsibility and wants to start a movement against gun misuse. But two families lost a son that night. One to death, the other to a prison cell, and no sentence can rewrite that ending. Number 15, Greg Oden. Greg Oden was supposed to be the next great NBA big man, a 7-foot can't-miss prospect taken first overall in 2017 ahead of Kevin Durant. But injuries derailed his career, and by 2014, the headlines weren't about rebounds or blocks, they were about an arrest. In August of that year, police were called to his mother's home in Lawrence, Indiana. They found Oden's ex-girlfriend on a couch with blood on her face, swelling around her nose, and cuts on her forehead. Witnesses said Oden had punched her during a heated argument. Oden admitted to the police, "I was wrong, and I know what has to happen." The two had recently broken up after 2 years of dating. Oden claimed things got out of control, saying he accidentally hit her while trying to break free from people holding him back. The court didn't see it as an accident. He was charged with 2 felony battery counts. By December, Oden accepted a plea deal for felony battery with moderate bodily injury. His punishment, a $200 fine, 26 weeks of domestic violence counseling, AA classes, over 2 years probation, and a no-contact order. It was a harsh reminder that even off the court, bad decisions can be career-ending. Number 14, Derrick Rose. By 2011, Derrick Rose wasn't just the NBA's youngest MVP, he was Chicago's golden son, carrying the Bulls to the Eastern Conference Finals. Then came one line in ESPN the magazine that lit up the sports world. Asked to rate PED use in the NBA from 1 to 10, Rose allegedly answered 7. It's huge. That's the kind of number that makes fans and league execs spit out their coffee. The implication? The NBA had a performance-enhancing drug problem nobody wanted to admit. Rose quickly denied it, saying he didn't remember the question and must have misunderstood. His follow-up? "I do not believe there is a performance-enhancing drug problem in the NBA. The league tests players 4 times a season," he noted. "So if there was an issue, it would definitely show up." But ESPN stood by their quote. Whether Rose meant it or not, the conversation hit a nerve. Basketball has largely dodged the steroid scrutiny that crushed MLB and shadowed the NFL, yet players are bigger, faster, and stronger than ever, and a handful have failed drug tests. Rose's 7 could have been the start of an overdue discussion. Instead, it became a quote both he and the NBA wanted buried fast. Number 13, Shawn Kemp. Shawn Kemp's thunderous dunks once electrified NBA arenas, but in 2023, it was gunfire outside a Washington mall that put him in the news. The 6-time All-Star pleaded guilty to second-degree assault after a confrontation at Tacoma Mall escalated into an exchange of shots with 2 men in a Toyota 4Runner. According to court filings, the trouble began when Kemp's truck was broken into during a Seattle event. Stolen items included memorabilia, keys to his cannabis dispensary, and a phone, which he later tracked to the suspects. Kemp confronted them near a casino, then again at the mall. Witness accounts and defense documents suggest someone in the 4Runner fired first, Kemp returned fire, allegedly aiming to disable the vehicle. No one was injured, though both vehicles were hit. Initially facing first-degree assault and drive-by shooting charges, Kemp reached a plea deal, avoiding a trial. Prosecutors recommended 9 months in jail, a firearm ban, DNA submission, and restitution. For fans, it was another chapter in a post-career decline that has included past drug possession arrests. Once the Rain Man of Seattle basketball, Kemp now finds himself working to close a far different kind of chapter. Number 12, Anthony Grundy. Anthony Grundy's basketball journey took him from starring at NC State to a brief stint with the Atlanta Hawks, then across Europe and Asia. But his life off the court was far more turbulent than his stat sheet suggested. In June 2019, Grundy, then 40, was arrested for a fatal hit and run in Louisville, Kentucky. Police said he struck a woman crossing the highway and drove away, later admitting he knew he hit something but didn't stop. He was charged with leaving the scene, failing to render aid, and driving without a license or insurance. It was not his first brush with the law. Grundy had multiple DWI arrests in North Carolina. Just months later, tragedy struck again. This time, he was the victim. In December 2019, Louisville police responded to a domestic dispute and found Grundy with multiple stab wounds. He died later that evening at the hospital. No arrests were made, and details of the altercation remain unclear. Teammates remembered him as competitive, gifted, and kind-hearted. Even as his legal troubles cast shadows over his legacy, Grundy's story is one of immense talent, global basketball success, and personal battles that ultimately ended in a violent and heartbreaking way. Number 11, the Steven Jackson versus Steve Francis club chaos. This wasn't a playoff showdown, but it sure had the energy of one. Steven Jackson was in the club, mic in hand, doing his thing on stage, when Steve Francis made an unexpected, let's say, entrance. Jackson says Francis jumped up on the DJ booth behind him and bumped him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. By the third, Jackson says he felt a belt on his neck and had enough. Words flew, tempers snapped, and suddenly Jackson's hands was around Francis' throat. Security got involved. Francis ended up in cuffs, and the internet got a new piece of viral NBA lore. For Jackson, it was just another chapter in a career filled with big moments and bigger controversies, from winning a ring with the Spurs to malice at the Palace. For Francis, who once soared his Stevie franchise in Houston, it was another off-court headline in a post-playing career that's had its share of rough nights. No points were scored that night, no trophies handed out. Just 2 former All-Stars, a packed club, and a reminder that NBA drama doesn't always stay on the hardwood. Number 10, the William Bedford story. William Bedford had the height, the talent, and the ring. But his career didn't end with champagne in the locker room. Drafted 6th overall in 1986, the 7-footer won a title with the Bad Boy Pistons in 1990. Yet behind the glory, he was battling addiction, a fight he'd been losing since college. By the early 2000s, Bedford wasn't posting up in the paint. He was moving weight on the streets. Arrested with 25 pounds of marijuana in Michigan, plus prior drug charges, he was hit with a 10-year prison sentence in 2003. Behind bars, Bedford faced more than just lost freedom. He said there were moments when people tried to stab him. He learned quick that one fight could turn the whole prison into chaos. Bedford admits he followed one of the dumbest ideas he'd ever heard: to stop smoking weed and start selling it. At first, it was small time. Then came bigger deals, bigger risks, and the fall. When he walked out in 2011, Bedford was a free man, but also one of basketball's biggest what-ifs. From an NCAA Final Four run to an NBA championship, his potential was sky high until the wrong choices brought it crashing down. Number 9, Leon Smith. Leon Smith's story isn't just another young player flames out headline. It's one of the NBA's most heartbreaking what could have been tales. At just 19, Smith had the size, 6'10", the promise, and a $1.4 million contract, but also years of pain nobody in the league really understood. Taken from his mother at age 4, raised in Chicago group homes, Smith entered the NBA without the support system or life skills to handle it. It didn't take long for cracks to show. Defiant at his very first Mavericks camp, telling Donnie Nelson, "Why don't you run them yourself?" Smith refused developmental league assignments and isolated from teammates. Then came the breaking point, a suicide attempt involving over 200 aspirin, followed by psychiatric care, arrests, and disturbing confrontations in Chicago. The NBA and Players Association tried to intervene, but by then, Smith was spiraling, caught between a league that saw him as a PR problem and a life that had been turbulent long before basketball. "I was trying to end my life," Smith later admitted. "That was the only way I knew to stop the pain." Leon Smith's story isn't about wasted talent. It's about a system that wasn't ready for him and a young man who wasn't ready for the system. Number 8, Darius Miles. Darius Miles went from East St. Louis rough streets to Hollywood lights faster than most people blink. At 18, he was the number 3 pick in the 2000 draft, riding private jets, signing with Nike, even popping up in movies with Scarlett Johansson. By 35, though, he was broke, completely broke, after earning roughly $62 million in the NBA. His downfall? Not Ferraris or diamond chains, but shady business deals that bled him dry. Bad real estate investments, debts to the IRS, and people in his circle draining his cash all piled up. In 2016, he filed for bankruptcy, auctioning off everything from a signed LeBron jersey to an AR-556 rifle. But the money was only half the story. When his mother died in 2013, Miles spiraled into deep depression, barely leaving her house for years, sleeping with a gun by his side, paranoid and stuck in the same neighborhood he fought to escape. It took his friend and ex-teammate Quentin Richardson to pull him back from the edge. Now, Miles speaks openly about mental health, saying, "If a real dude like me can struggle with depression, anybody can." From fame to rock bottom, Miles' journey is a cautionary tale with a human heart. Number 7, Luther Wright. Luther Wright was supposed to be the next big man to dominate the paint, literally. At 7'2", drafted 18th overall by the Utah Jazz in 1993, he had the size, the skill, and the shot-blocking menace to carve out a career in the league. But instead of swatting shots next to Karl Malone and John Stockton, Wright's time in the NBA lasted just 15 games. What happened? His story spiraled fast. Wright battled mental health struggles that went undiagnosed for years. After leaving the team mid-season, he ended up homeless, drifting between shelters and at one point sleeping on the streets of Newark. He later revealed that he had been living with schizoaffective disorder, which caused delusions and paranoia. Wright's post-NBA life wasn't just about basketball lost, it was about survival. He admitted to falling into destructive habits, lost contact with friends, and even walking away from the sport entirely. Years later, Wright began speaking publicly about mental health, turning his painful journey into a mission to help others. His NBA career might have been short, but his story, it's one of the league's most haunting what could have been tales. Number 6, Melvin Turpin. Melvin, the Big Dipper Turpin, was a legend in Kentucky. A 6'11" center with soft hands, deadly touch, and a knack for making the rim his personal property. In the early 80s, he led the Wildcats to 3 straight SEC titles and a Final Four, teaming up with Sam Bowie to form one of the most feared big man duos in college hoops. His 42-point explosion against Tennessee still echoes in Kentucky lore. Drafted 6th overall in 1984, in the same class as Jordan, Olajuwon, and Barkley, Turpin was supposed to own the paint in the pros, but weight battles, knee issues, and conditioning struggles kept him from reaching his potential. NBA fans nicknamed him Dinner Bell Mel, while Kentucky fans never stopped calling him a hero. Off the court, Turpin was known for his smile, self-depreciating humor, and love for people, which is why July 8, 2010 stunned everyone. Turpin died by suicide at just 49. Friends said they saw no signs. His death became a sobering reminder that behind the jerseys and highlight reels, even giants can carry silent battles. Melvin Turpin's story remains one of college basketball's brightest and most heartbreaking chapters. Number 5, Walter Davis. Walter Sweet D. Davis could make a jumper look like poetry. Rookie of the Year in '78, a 6-time All-Star, and one of the smoothest scorers the Phoenix Suns ever had. Davis had the game, the accolades, and the respect of his peers. But behind that effortless mid-range stroke was a battle most fans never saw. In the late 80s, Davis' career took a brutal turn when he was linked to a major drug investigation involving several Suns players. Cocaine use, something he later admitted to, pulled him into a spiral that not only damaged his reputation, but also almost ended his NBA journey. Alcohol abuse joined the fight, making the struggle even harder. Davis eventually entered rehab and worked to turn things around, proving that his fight wasn't just on the court. He came back, extended his career, and even served as a mentor to younger players. But his story remains one of talent tested by temptation, a reminder that even the smoothest shot can hide the toughest battles. In Phoenix, they still remember the jumper, but those who knew him best also remember the war he fought off the hardwood. Number 4, Chris Gatling. Chris Gatling's NBA journey had all the makings of a success story. An 11-year career, 9 different teams, and an all-star nod in 1997. Nicknamed the Energizer for his relentless hustle, Gatling carved out a reputation as a reliable scorer and tough interior presence, but his post-basketball life told a very different story. In 2017, Gatling was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison for running a telemarketing scam in Scottsdale, Arizona. Prosecutors said he preyed on vulnerable seniors, selling them fictitious websites with promises of big profits. Over 4 months, Gatling collected more than $155,000, spending much of it on clothes, restaurants, and strip clubs. Victims included retirees who lost their life savings. This wasn't the first brush with Arizona law. In 2013, he pleaded guilty to squatting in a Paradise Valley home and attempting to rent it out online. The fraud case also tied him to a $90,000 credit card scheme involving a local fitness studio. For a player who made around $30 million in his career, Gatling's fall was steep, a cautionary tale of squandered wealth, poor choices, and the dangers that can lurk long after the final whistle. Number 3, Terry Furlow. Terry Furlow had the rare give me the ball and get out of the way swagger. A bucket getter from Michigan State. He tore through defenders like they were traffic cones and looked every bit the part of an NBA star in the making. But off the court, that's where the danger was waiting. In May 1980, the 25-year-old guard was flying down a Cleveland freeway in his sports car when tragedy struck. Furlow lost control, crashed at high speed, and was killed instantly. Toxicology reports later revealed a deadly mix of cocaine and alcohol in his system. It wasn't just a car wreck, it was the final chapter in a battle he'd been losing quietly. Furlow had shown flashes with the 76ers, Cavaliers, and Jazz, including a stretch in Utah where he averaged over 16 points a game. Teammates loved his fire, but whispers about his partying and substance abuse were never far behind. His death shook the league, a brutal reminder that talent can't shield you from the consequences of risky choices. Terry Furlow's story remains one of basketball's most haunting what-ifs, gone before his prime ever had the chance to peak. Number 2, Jamison Curry. Jamison Curry's NBA career was so short you could miss it while tying your shoes, literally. He logged just 39 seconds with the Clippers in 2010, the shortest playing career in league history. But while his time on the hardwood was a blink, his rap sheet told a much longer story. Curry's trouble started early, busted for selling marijuana in high school, which got him booted from North Carolina before he even played a game. He rebounded at Oklahoma State, showing flashes of real talent, and the Chicago Bulls took a chance on him in the 2007 draft. But instead of building an NBA resume, Curry built a police record. Over the years, he racked up 13 arrests tied to drugs, disorderly conduct, and other off-court issues. His career dissolved into stints overseas and in minor leagues, where the headlines were more about handcuffs than highlight reels. It's one of those classic what could have been NBA tales. A gifted scorer whose biggest numbers ended up in arrest totals, not points per game. Number 1, Paul Pierce. Before he became the truth and lifted the Larry O'Brien trophy in 2008, Paul Pierce came dangerously close to never seeing another game. It was September 25, 2000, and the 22-year-old Celtic was already flashing star potential, averaging 18 a night, posed to be Boston's next great. Then came the Buzz Club in Boston's theater district. Pierce wasn't there to cause trouble. Witnesses say he was breaking up a fight. But in the chaos, someone turned on him. He was stabbed 11 times, face, neck, and back, had a bottle smashed over his head, and was left bleeding out. teammate Tony Battie and Pierce's brother didn't wait for an ambulance. They threw him in a car, rushed to the hospital, and doctors performed emergency lung surgery. Most players talk about surviving a playoff series. Pierce literally survived death and went on to make Celtic history. The box scores and banners only tell half the story. The other half, the part we covered today, is messy, dangerous, and at times tragic. These players had it all and then lost it in ways that still shock fans years later. Maybe it's a cautionary tale, maybe it's just proof that fame doesn't erase human flaws. Either way, it's clear the NBA's most unforgettable stories aren't always written in the record books. Which one stuck with you the most? And if you want more such NBA stories on your feed, hit the like and subscribe button for all the updates. Until next time.